Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of GeoPod. I'm your host Dylan Woods. On today's episode, I will discuss why a premature exit of the United States pertaining to the ongoing Iran conflict is a very bad idea. So think of this as a strategy breakdown with some elements of an update mixed into it. Now, recently, there's been a lot of talk about the exit strategy of the United States pertaining to this conflict, right? How is this war going to end? Is it going to end anytime soon? And in what circumstances and based on what conditions? And these are all fair questions, right? The problem is that in the grand scheme of things, this war truly hasn't lasted that long yet, right? We're barely a month into it. Tactical and operational objectives as of this particular moment in time, and to a lesser extent strategic objectives are being met, are being achieved, are being accomplished. However, the complete decapacitation of the Ayatollah regime, as well as the complete degradation, or rather the complete annihilation of their military capabilities, is obviously not yet a reality as of this particular point in time. Which prompts the question, how much longer is it going to take? And if it is not feasible within the time frame outlined by CENTCOM and the United States government, then what? Right? Now, I've previously talked on this channel countless times about some of the things that the Israeli United States Combined Strike Force could have done, what they should have done in order to make their campaign a tad more efficient and effective. So I won't necessarily go into that right now. What I will say, or rather the case that I will make over the course of this clip, is why a premature exit is in no one's best interest. Certainly not of the best interest of the Gulf states, the bigger Middle East, and the Western world in general. Right? When we're talking about a United States exit, when we're talking about a complete cessation of all hostilities based upon the current standings, here's what we need to remember. First and foremost, the Ayatollah regime is still in power. They have been weakened. They have been battered. They have been degraded. Yes, all of this is true. However, they're still in power. They still have full command and control over their ground forces. And they still have a complete monopoly on Iran. Be it their military, their political frameworks, their economic systems, whatever it may be, they're in control. As of this particular moment in time, they still have military capabilities. They still have long-range capabilities to target Israel, to target the Gulf states, and they still have military capabilities to target the Strait of Hormuz. Albeit degraded, however, these military capabilities still persist, meaning international shipping, and thereby global trade in the world's economy, is not safe as of this particular moment in time. So, for all the people who are pushing for an immediate withdrawal of the United States, for an immediate cessation of all hostilities, to them I would ask, what do you think is going to happen if that occurs? Well, you think the Ayatollah regime is going to pop the champagne and he's going to shake hands and we're all going to go on happily ever after? No. The Ayatollah regime is going to do what it has done before, when it was sanctioned, when it was battered. It's going to regenerate, regroup, learn from the lessons of this war, and come back stronger and significantly more dangerous. They've already stated their policies regarding the Strait of Hormuz will alter significantly after the war, meaning no Western vessel will be able to pass one of the world's most strategically important waterways. Meaning we have allowed a rogue regime to enforce a complete blockade regarding one of the world's most strategically important waterways. Are we happy with that reality? Would we want to live in that reality? Well, here's an answer for you. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. So that's the first thing what's going to happen. Let me tell you another thing that's going to happen. Apart from recovery, regenerating, and rebuilding their ballistic missile and nuclear programs, they're going to add to it. They're going to implement and integrate lessons learned, like I've just said. They're going to significantly alter their doctrine. And they're going to boost it up with more munitions, more capabilities, and more modern advanced weapon systems. Now, previously, or rather a long time ago on this channel, I think it even was previously a long time ago on this channel, I laid out a wish list of the Ayatollah regime, a wish list that the Ayatollah regime presented to the Russian government regarding the weapon systems they wish to procure in order to enter the next stage of their military development, including 4th generation fighter jets, 4th generation air defense systems, anti-armor attack helicopters, unmanned submarines, advanced electronic warfare capabilities. And this is just the top of the iceberg. So what do you think they're going to do if they're allowed to survive, if they're allowed to rebuild, with at least some portion of their defense industrial base still in place? They're gonna rush to acquire, at least to a certain extent, all of these systems that I've just outlined, making them a significantly more dangerous threat in the long run. Here's another thing that they're going to do. They're gonna double down on their control of the Strait of Hormuz. Their infrastructure in Kark, the infrastructure in Latak, Qasem, the Tums Islands will be quadrupled. I can guarantee you that. Given the fact that it has allowed them, hypothetically of course, speaking in the scenario where the United States withdraws prematurely, it has proven quite the effective tactic for them, hasn't it? Everyone is talking about the surging gas price. Everyone is talking about surging energy prices. And if the United States does withdraw prematurely from this conflict, it will be mostly due to the blockade the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps imposes on the Strait of Hormuz. So they're going to double down on it. They're going to reinforce their infrastructure, reinforce their military capabilities surrounding those islands, and able to further enforce a blockade, and even perhaps even to an extent that it will survive a war of attrition in the future. And last but not least, here's another thing that they will do. They are going to look for security pacts with their allies, mimicking the security pacts Russia currently has with North Korea. I guarantee you, they should. I would if I was in their shoes. I would seek out security pacts with China, with North Korea, with Russia. At this particular moment in time, I believe North Korea to be the most feasible option for them. And once they have that, once they have a security pact similar to the ones enjoyed between Russia and North Korea and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, well, now we're in for a real treat. And now the next round of fighting might very well trigger World War III on a much wider scale, as previously suggested, right? So what the Western world needs to do is the Western world needs to think and ask itself if it could live with such a reality, not whether it could be happy or comfortable with such a reality. No, can it live with such a reality? Here's what we know. Iran for the past decades has been one of the greatest global destabilizers the world has ever seen. It has played a pivotal role in the early years of Russia's military campaign against Ukraine. It has played a pivotal role in the destabilization of the Middle East. Its proxy network and their activities have reached all the way to Sudan, including every country, every territory between the homeland of Iran and Sudan as well. Their reach is far. Hezbollah fighters, Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps operatives, have been active in Latin America for decades on end, in Venezuela, in Colombia, networking with drugs cartels, totalitarian regimes, dictators. This has all been well documented. The list of UN resolutions pertaining to the desecration of any agreement Iran has made with the International Atomic Agency, it goes on and on and on. What do you think, that when this war stops, that the Iranian regime will forego all these objectives and all these activities? No, they will double down on them because they have worked. And apparently the Western world is too feeble to definitely stop them in that regard. So yes, exiting this conflict prematurely isn't gonna make the world a better place. It's not gonna make the Middle East a more stabler place. It's only going to double down on the chaos that currently persists because of the Ayatollah regime, its proxies, and its allies. Which is, on the grander scheme of things, the problem that poses the adversary entente on the four horsemen, as I've previously referred to them on this channel. At the same time, and this is more a matter of perception, I guess, what damage will it do to the United States' reputation as a military superpower if it would exit the war in Iran prematurely, without having suffered significant casualties, without having suffered significant material losses? Have there been losses? Yes, of course. It's a war. Munitions get lost. Infrastructure gets damaged. People lose their lives. Unfortunately, That's why war, if can be, needs to be prevented. But if it cannot be prevented, it needs to be waged decisively, as I've previously reiterated on many of my previous clips. Why does it need to be waged decisively? To prevent loss of life on the long run. And that's something in the West we've forgotten. We are an incredibly reactive society, an incredibly reactive civilization. Prevention and preemptive action is alien to us. It makes us highly uncomfortable. And one of the main reasons why that is we want to be perceived as the good party through any and all perspectives. Here's the harsh reality of that matter. That will never be. Plain and simple. In the eyes of criticasters, in the eyes of feeble men, in the eyes of fragile leaders who cannot make the decisions that they have been appointed for to make, there will always be a villain. You will always be perceived as a villain in one way or another. A warmonger. They call Churchill the same thing. Well, thank God he was a warmonger when we needed him to be, wasn't he? We in the West have forgotten what it takes to win wars. We have forgotten what it takes to wage them. We have forgotten the societal resilience and resolve necessary to build a front against evildoers, to build a front against those entities who simply wish to see the world burn. And the Ayatollah regime is one of those entities. They will manipulate, they will sabotage to such an extent that they will first and foremost blur the lines between reality and falsehood. For any layman looking into the conflict from afar, to push the boundaries, to push the parameters of societal divide to the absolute extremes. Because the truth is not their friend. Because militarily, when it comes down to a contest of power, they are no match for the Western world. That's why they resort to asymmetrical warfare, including shadow warfare, including psychological warfare, including the weaponization of the information space, which they have done for decades and decades on end, which their proxies are doing right now and have been doing for decades and decades on end. Hezbollah, Hamas, you name them. Their modus operandi is vividly similar to that of the Ayatollah regime and their efforts pertaining to the information space in this conflict. There was a general, retired general, I believe, of the United States Armed Forces. His name is lost to me right now, but what he basically said was this. He said the Western world has all the power necessary to survive any threat, to topple any threat, to dominate on any battlefield. The greatest vulnerability in the Western world security posture is the confidence to project the power it possesses. And he couldn't be more right. He couldn't be more correct. We have become a very feeble, a very fragile society. And it's very painful for me, and as it must be painful for many others who have a profound understanding of history, to see similar mistakes being made over and over and over again. We made the similar mistakes in the face of World War II. Now, I'm not saying that the Iranian regime currently poses a similar threat that the Nazi regime did in 1939, but the mindset of the Western world is profoundly similar to the one we have as of this particular moment in time. We want the threat to be here, right in our face, before we feel comfortable to do anything about it. Here lies the problem. Once the threat is in your face, has organized itself, structured itself, prepared itself, it's already too late. You have lost at every turn to preemptively neutralize the threat, as is your duty as great world powers and great world leaders. Prevent the threat in the earliest stage possible, to prevent dramatic loss of life in the long run. Many people would argue war is never the answer. Oh yes it is. Oh yes it is. NATO was formed on values that we all agreed were worth defending, were worth fighting for. So yes, sometimes war is the answer. If these values that are pose the fundamental pillars to the civilized world, if these pillars are at risk, then yes, we must defend them by any means necessary. So yes, sometimes war is the answer, especially when dealing with tyrants, dictators and regimes who simply wish to disseminate anarchy and chaos, and to extend the scale of their domination. We're talking about a regime that in 1 month killed 30,000 of its own people, simply because they arose in protest, simply because they spoke aloud. They exercised one of the basic human rights, the right to exist in relative decency. And they got slaughtered. Does anyone, all these political commentators you see now on Piers Morgan Uncensored, on Twitter, on social media, do any of them refer to those catastrophes? No. Because Israel didn't commit them, for one, right? Seems to be quite a friend. If Israel cannot be bashed, then why talk about it? So no. Nothing about a premature exit in this conflict will bring about a more stable and more peaceful world. To the contrary. To the contrary. And if the United States wants to maintain its status as the world's primary military superpower and leader of the Western-led world order, it needs to see this through, at the very least, until the point that the Ayatollah regime is severely degraded in its ability to wreak havoc across the Middle East and is unable to enforce a blockade on the world's most strategically important waterway. Now, in my eyes, even that's not enough, and I've previously laid out multiple strategies and methodologies on this channel pertaining to how to topple the Ayatollah regime, how to escalate military action, keeping in mind security and safeguarding as many lives as possible. I've previously laid out these strategies on this channel, so I will not repeat them right now. What I will say is this: I will post one additional strategy breakdown pertaining to the current Iran conflict on this channel, probably somewhere next week or the week after, where I will discuss some strategies and methodologies the United States can adhere to if it would opt for a full-scale invasion of Iran. Now, let me just say right here, right now, that that's not an option that I deem to be feasible. It's not an option I would choose if I was in command of CENTCOM or the United States military apparatus in general. But given the talk and given the suggestions circling online recently, I thought it fitting to perhaps delve into it a little bit more and give you guys at least some perspective, some idea, some notion of what a full-scale invasion in Iran would look like for the United States military. And I already will tell you this, it's not what you think. There's a lot of fear-mongering going on. There's a lot of disinformation being disseminated by various actors. And I feel that societal divide, as of this particular moment in time, is at its highest point. We're living in very dangerous times. And information, knowledge based upon truth, not your truth, not my truth, the truth, is an absolute superpower in the times that we live in. Back to the main point, a premature exit for the United States will have dramatic and disastrous consequences for regional and global stability on the long run. Iran is not our friend. Iran never was our friend. We're talking about a regime that for decades on end has burnt the Israeli and the American flags, calling the West the great Satan that needs to be burnt in the sacred fires of their supreme deity, of their interpretation of their religion. These people, who we have tried to negotiate with for decades and decades and decades on end, will not yield, will not stop until they are sufficiently degraded or neutralized in a way that they will never be able to pose a threat to the Western world and to regional stability again. And up until that point in time, the United States should stay in this fight to ensure not just a greater chance of regional stability, but to ensure that their status as a reliable security provider will remain intact. Because guess what? It's not just the Gulf states that are looking at this conflict with hawk eyes. It's Japan, it's South Korea, it's Taiwan, it's the Philippines. We're starting to wonder, can we truly trust the United States if war arrives on our doorstep? Can we truly trust in the United States' integrity to see our struggle through, to help us see our struggle through when the going gets tough? When another massive power is challenging security stability in the Pacific. And if the United States prematurely withdraws from this conflict, leaving its allies to fend for themselves, then it can have dramatic consequences to its security posture within the Pacific. And I might delve a little bit deeper into that in another clip. As of now, this is all that I want to share with you guys today, just to give you my 2 cents and my perspective on the ongoing sentiments and the ongoing discussions pertaining to this war and pertaining to the current campaign that the United States of America is waging in Iran. Once again, and I reiterate this point, and I will reiterate it as much as need be, war should be avoided whenever possible. Diplomatic solutions should be sought after whenever possible. But a great leader, a great visionary must have the presence and solidity of mind to understand when diplomacy is no longer an option, and then respond with precise and enduring force as to negate the threats of today and deter the threats of tomorrow. Thank you for taking the time to watching this clip. Have a good day.